Every single year, over 600 million tourists flood into just 5 European destinations: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Amsterdam, and Prague, while hundreds of extraordinary places across the same continent sit almost completely empty, waiting to be discovered. The crowds, the queues, the overpriced coffee next to the Eiffel Tower, none of that is inevitable. Europe has a secret, and most travelers never find it. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover places that experienced travelers whisper about but rarely publish online. We will walk through forgotten medieval cities, untouched coastlines, and mountain landscapes that look like they were painted rather than photographed. And the one thing that will genuinely surprise you, the most breathtaking destination in this entire video costs less to visit than a single night in a budget hostel in Barcelona. Stay with us, because this changes how you will travel forever. Europe as a tourist destination has a history that stretches back centuries. The concept of the Grand Tour, which began in the 17th century, sent wealthy young Englishmen on a fixed circuit through France, Italy, and occasionally Greece. That circuit, built around prestige, art, and aristocratic ambition, became the template for European tourism, and remarkably, it has barely changed in 400 years. Paris, Rome, Venice, and Florence still dominate the itineraries of first-time visitors because the cultural programming around those cities is so deeply embedded in Western imagination that questioning it feels almost wrong. But here is the reality. Europe contains 50 recognized countries, thousands of cities, and coastlines that stretch across 5 distinct seas. The idea that 5 cities capture the best of all that is simply not true. It never was. The modern tourist infrastructure that developed after World War II reinforced the same narrow circuit. Airlines built their hub routes around major capitals. Hotel chains clustered in cities with the most foot traffic. Travel guidebooks, for decades, recycled the same recommendations because that is what sold copies. The result is a self-reinforcing loop where overcrowding makes famous places worse, while genuinely remarkable destinations remain unknown simply because nobody has written about them at sufficient volume. Let us start in Albania, specifically the city of Berat, which UNESCO designated a World Heritage Site in 2008. Berat is sometimes called the city of 1,000 windows because of the rows upon rows of Ottoman-era houses stacked up a hillside, each facade dominated by enormous symmetrical windows that seem to watch you as you walk through the valley below. The old castle district, known as Kalaja, is not a ruin you admire from a distance. It is a living neighborhood where families still reside inside the ancient walls, children play in the cobblestone alleys, and small cafes serve raki and coffee overlooking a river bend that has not fundamentally changed since the 13th century. Albania as a whole receives fewer than 6 million tourists annually. Croatia, its neighbor, receives over 20 million. The difference in experience for a traveler is almost impossible to overstate. Moving north through the Balkans, Serbia offers something that almost no other European country can, a capital city that functions as a major cultural hub but remains almost entirely off the mainstream tourist radar. Belgrade sits at the confluence of the Sava and Danube rivers and carries a history that swings dramatically between triumph and devastation. The Kalemegdan fortress alone contains remnants of Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, and Habsburg occupation all within a single park. But here is what nobody talks about. Belgrade has one of the most sophisticated and affordable food scenes in Europe. A 3-course meal at a quality restaurant in the city centre costs, on average, between 8 and 12 euros. The equivalent experience in Lisbon, which markets itself as a budget European destination, now runs 3 to 4 times that price. But here is what nobody talks about when it comes to hidden European gems. It is not just about affordability. Some of the most overlooked places are overlooked precisely because they defy easy categorization. They are not famous for one iconic thing. They offer instead a textured experience that resists the kind of simplification that social media demands. Take the Faroe Islands, an autonomous archipelago sitting in the North Atlantic between Norway and Iceland. 18 volcanic islands, a population of just over 50,000 people, and landscapes so dramatically vertical that photographs of them consistently get accused of being digitally manipulated. The sea cliffs at Trelanipa drop almost 150 meters straight into the ocean. The village of Saxon sits inside an almost perfectly circular bowl of mountains, accessible by a single narrow road, and looks less like a real place and more like the visual effects team from a fantasy film built it for a shoot and forgot to dismantle it. The Faroe Islands receive approximately 100,000 visitors per year. Iceland, with comparable but arguably less dramatic scenery, receives over 2 million. The map tells a very clear story. Moving into mainland Europe, the region of Matera in southern Italy represents one of the most profound historical surprises on the entire continent. Matera contains the Sassi, cave dwellings carved directly into a ravine that have been continuously inhabited for over 9,000 years, making it one of the oldest continuously occupied human settlements on Earth. The Italian government forcibly evacuated the population in 1952, considering the caves a symbol of poverty and national shame. Decades later, Matera was recognized as a European capital of culture, and those same caves are now boutique hotels where guests sleep inside rooms that ancient civilizations carved by hand. Matera receives visitors, but nowhere near the numbers that its extraordinary nature deserves, partly because it sits in Basilicata, one of Italy's least visited regions, far from the tourist corridors of Rome and the Amalfi Coast. The pattern here is consistent and worth examining carefully. These destinations share a common characteristic. They are geographically or culturally adjacent to famous places but fall just outside the zone of attention that mainstream travel media has traditionally covered. Kotor in Montenegro sits 40 minutes from the Croatian border and offers walled medieval architecture that rivals Dubrovnik in quality but charges a fraction of the price and attracts perhaps 1/10 of the crowd. Plovdiv in Bulgaria is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Europe, with a preserved old town of colourful 19th century houses and a Roman amphitheatre sitting in the middle of a pedestrian street, yet it remains almost completely absent from mainstream European travel conversations. What do these places tell us about the nature of travel itself? There is a psychological mechanism at work in how we choose destinations. Social proof, the tendency to trust the choices of large numbers of other people, is extraordinarily powerful in travel decision-making. We visit places because we have seen evidence that others found them worthwhile. Famous destinations generate photographs, which generate desire, which generates more visitors, which generates more photographs. The cycle is almost impossible to break from within. The only way to step outside it is deliberate, conscious effort to seek information from sources that operate outside the mainstream recommendation engine. The economic implications of this imbalance are significant. Over-tourism in cities like Venice has produced documented crises, population decline as residents leave, infrastructure strain, and a fundamental transformation of what those cities actually are. Venice's permanent resident population has fallen from 170,000 in the 1950s to fewer than 50,000 today. Meanwhile, the tourism economy of Albania, Serbia, and similar destinations remains underdeveloped in ways that mean visitor spending creates genuine and disproportionate positive impact for local communities. When you spend money in a place that is not accustomed to tourist volume, more of that money stays in the local economy rather than flowing back to international hotel chains and global booking platforms. The hidden gems of Europe are not hidden because they lack quality. They are hidden because the systems we use to discover travel destinations are biased toward the already discovered. Breaking that pattern requires nothing more than a willingness to look slightly to the left of where everyone else is already looking. Berat and Matera and the Faroe Islands and Kotor and Belgrade are not consolation prizes for travelers who missed out on the famous spots. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to TravelSphere for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.